How do you start, sustain, or end interpersonal relationships? How do you use communication to improve your relationship with other people? These are some of the questions that we will answer in this video. Are you ready? Let's begin. We will talk about 5 ways to improve our interpersonal communication skills. First is listening effectively. Next is holding effective conversations. Third is supporting others. Fourth is using interpersonal influence. And finally, managing conflict. These skills will not just help us to have better interpersonal relationships with our friends, family, romantic partners, schoolmates, or workmates, but will also help us to become better communicators in general. So let's start first with listening effectively. Listening is the process of receiving, constructing meaning from, and responding to verbal and nonverbal messages. It is different from hearing because when you listen, you don't just hear what you have heard, but you also process what you have heard and respond to it either verbally or non-verbally. There are 3 things that affect our listening. First is our listening style. It is our favorite but usually unconscious approach to attending to your partner's messages. It can be relational or focusing on our partner's feelings, analytical or focusing on gathering information or thinking carefully about what we hear, transactional or wanting speakers to get straight to the point, and critical or focusing on the accuracy and consistency of the speaker's messages. The second factor or challenge is listening apprehension or the anxiety we feel about listening that interferes with our ability to be effective listeners. And the last factor is the dual process approach to listening. It can be passive listening or having an effortless, thoughtless, and habitual process of receiving the messages we hear. Or it can be active listening or the skillful, intentional, deliberate, and conscious process of attending to, understanding, remembering, critically evaluating, and responding to messages that we hear. We will talk about that more later. Our personal listening style, our listening apprehension, and the listening approaches we take shape how we listen, perceive, and respond to other people. I mentioned that the active listening process is a skillful, intentional, and conscious process of listening, which are the ideal things for us to be effective communicators. And we may use this process to attend, understand, remember, critically evaluate, and respond to the messages we heard. So let's talk about that one by one. Attending is the process of willfully striving to perceive selected sounds that are being heard. So to improve your attending skills, you get physically and mentally ready to attend, make the shift from speaker to listener a complete one, resist tuning out, and avoid interrupting. Next is understanding, or the process of accurately decoding a message so that you share its meaning with the speaker. So to increase your understanding skills, you need to identify first the speaker's purpose and key points, interpret nonverbal cues, ask clarifying questions, and paraphrase what you hear. The third one is remembering, or the process of moving information from short-term memory to long-term memory. So to be more skilled at remembering, repeat what was said to you, use mnemonic devices, and take notes. Next is critically evaluating. It is the process of interpreting what you have understood to determine how truthful, authentic, or believable you judge the meaning to be. So to improve your critical evaluation skills, first is to separate facts from inferences, and second is to probe for information. Another one is responding, or the process of reacting to what has been heard while listening and after listening. So to improve your responding skills, provide back channel cues and reply when the message is complete. The next skill we will explore is holding effective conversations. So conversations are interactive, extemporaneous, locally managed, and sequentially organized interchanges of thoughts and feelings between two or more people. So our conversations vary in type, purpose, sequence, tone, participants, and settings. So we make conversations to get or share information, to get what we need, and also to be a better version of ourselves. So if we fail at making effective conversations, we will also fail to get our needs and wants in life. So as communicators, we follow some general guidelines for conducting conversations. First is to focus on others. We have a tendency to talk and focus on ourselves when we make conversations that we actually forgot that we are talking to someone. So we can also do that by taking turns appropriately and avoiding interruptions. Here, we practice our listening skills and also think about what we're going to say. So it's more like a preparation. Another thing we can do is to maintain conversational coherence. It is a way to create clear meaning in conversation. So maintaining conversational coherence means that you must be direct and clear. So we can also do this by protecting privacy. So we let our partners know that we can keep secrets and that we can be trusted. Another way is to choose appropriate humor in conversations. Humor helps us get to the mood and enjoy conversations. And it can also be used to enhance conversation, but it must be handled carefully to avoid offense. And finally, we can hold effective conversations by engaging in ethical dialogue. So according to Johansen, Valde, and Wedby, ethical dialogue occurs when conversational partners act in ways that are authentic, empathic, confirming, present, equal, and supportive. To improve conversation when you interact with someone for the first time, there are strategies for initiating, sustaining, and ending conversation. The strategies for initiation are making a comment or asking a ritual question and introducing yourself. You can sustain conversation more effectively if you use free information, ask questions, whether it's both closed-ended and open-ended, seek high-interest topics, self-disclose in appropriate ways, and listening actively. Terminating conversation goes most smoothly if you pay attention to and use both verbal and nonverbal leave-taking cues, verbalize a desire to end the conversation, and conclude with a simple parting comment. Skilled communication requires adaptation to cultural differences in conversational style. The next skill we will explore is supporting others. We show support through empathy, and once we are able to empathize with other people, we can show our sincerity and care towards them. But what exactly is empathy? Empathy is the cognitive and affective process of perceiving the emotions others are feeling and then acting on our perceptions. In other words, we become aware and mindful of our partner's emotions and we act towards their emotions. Empathizing is shown through perspective taking, sympathetic responsiveness, and emphatic responsiveness. Empathizing requires that we pay attention to the nonverbal and verbal paralanguage cues of our partners, recognize the emotional content of verbal messages, and use the skill of perception checking. So when we show support, we don't just empathize, we also provide others aid. Although we may try to comfort a person with a single supportive comment, more often our support requires longer conversation, or series of conversation over days, weeks, months, or even years. So supportive message skills include creating a supportive climate or validating emotions, encouraging reappraisal, offering advice, and providing celebratory support, such as greeting them on birthday during their birthdays. The next skill we will explore is using interpersonal influence. Interpersonal influence is a core element of our interpersonal relationships because it is the act of changing the attitudes or behaviors of others. So, using interpersonal influence involves power. It can be a perception, or it exists within a relationships, or it is not inherently good or bad. And the person with more power in a relationship can make or break the relationship rules. To show power in communication, we do that through persuasion or the use of verbal messages to influence others. We can also use nonverbal cues such as dressing well, body posture, eye contact, and other things that show that you can influence others. We can use social influence not only to change the general attitudes and behavior of others, but also to teach others how to treat us. The last skill we will explore is managing conflict. When we form interpersonal relationships and make conversations or interactions, we will always experience conflict. Conflicts are inevitable, even in good and healthy relationships. So, what exactly is interpersonal conflict? Interpersonal conflict is disagreement between two interdependent people who perceive that they have incompatible goals. Sometimes it gets sorted out. Sometimes conflict defines the relationship and might lead to terminating the relationship. So conflicts can be perceptual differences between partners. It can also be disagreement caused by a dispute over the truth. Conflicts can also be moral disagreements or disagreements over preferences or plans. Conflicts can also be an issue of power when both parties insist on being right on a particular argument. And conflicts can also be a disagreement about a particular conflict or what we call a meta conflict. We inevitably experience these types of conflict, but we can manage them through communication strategies. We can manage conflict by withdrawing or by physically or psychologically removing yourself in the conversation. We can also manage conflict by accommodating or satisfying the other person's needs or accepting the other person's ideas while neglecting one's own needs or ideas. We can also manage by competing or by satisfying your own needs or advancing your own ideas with little concern for the needs or ideas of the other person or for the relationship. We can also compromise or choose to satisfy their needs over ours. But we can also collaborate or resolve for a solution that mutually benefits both parties. These conflict management strategies, withdrawing, accommodating, competing, compromising, and collaborating, can be used and can be effective in certain circumstances. So, listening effectively, holding effective conversations, supporting others, using interpersonal influence, and managing conflict are very important for us to be better communicators. You don't need to memorize all of them, but you can relate those strategies with your own experience and eventually you'll figure it out as you interact with other people.